Recently, the Palm Springs Kiwanis Club had another great speaker. Let's listen in.
The first part is about the Columbia River and the Columbia River watershed that incorporates a vast area of British Columbia and Manitoba, I think it's Manitoba, and Washington, Oregon, Idaho. I think it's one of the biggest watersheds outside of the Mississippi in the United States. I lived on the Columbia River. My father was a fisherman there after he lost his job at the mill in 1928 and had to sell his house and all that kind of stuff, orchard. So I'll go on with a brief recent history of the Columbia River. Those things all say the same thing. I didn't prepare enough because a lot of you are hard of hearing, like I kind of am. About the Northwest, it will start 1,000 years ago when the hyperabundance of the magnificent Chinook salmon drew Native Americans, Indians, from many Western tribes, too many to name, from all over the West. They harvested these marvelous food source with spears, with nets, the crude nets, and dried and preserved them with smoky fires and enabled them to take them to their tribal homes as far away as the Dakotas and other inland areas. I'm sorry I'm reading this, but it's kind of complicated for this old man. They gathered at these locations on the Columbia, mostly at Celilo Falls, just east of the Dalles, Oregon. And incidentally, I grew up in that area, Hood River, where the fish became the most available in their journey and ascent to their procreation in the various tributaries of the Columbia, as far north as deep into Canada. These fish, in their ascent, and it's the survival of the fittest, sometimes back in those days, before the dams, these fish would be 75 to 100 pounds, these Chinook salmon. As you can imagine, these magnificent strains of fish grew to be this size in the various tributaries all the way up to British Columbia, Canada. I'd be seriously remiss if I did not speak of the industry that was spawned, no pun intended, by the harvesting of this resource by the various means. Fish wheels, purse seiners, sometimes with giant nets pulled by horses that would pull them up into the shallower waters of the Dalles and on beyond, and the sandy beaches, and of the various canneries along the lower Columbia River. In Astoria, at that time, there was over 50 canneries that would can the salmon and send them to many ports around at least the United States and sometimes into Europe. Page 2. Now let's get closer to chapter 2 here, my family home in Hood River, Oregon, some 25 miles west of Celilo Falls. A little shifting the gears here as we venture a little closer. Simply stated, my father, LURH-JENSEN Sr., was a fisherman, and an avid fisherman. And after the Depression, he lost his job at the mill and a forfeiture home and all that stuff. He moved to the city of Hood River and started selling radios. Back in those days, we had 2 radio stations, one in Seattle and one in Los Angeles. And you had to know how to string an antenna, you would know that, to get those radio stations. He was good at that. So LURH Sr. and his fishing buddy, Emil Grubner, incidentally a German die maker, fashioned several stamping dies from old car parts. And I still have them old car parts. And then redeployed an old hand crank printing press to crank down on the brass that punched out a blade. They then punched a hole in the top with a redeployed bottle capper, punch, punch, punch. And voila, a spinner blade was suddenly emerged. After it was duly polished and on top a clevis to ensure that it had proper swing on the blade, and they put a little hook on the bottom with feathers on it. You had a fishing lure. Throw it out in the river and catch a salmon. Like 1930. Of course, it had imported Czechoslovakian ruby red faceted beads. I still have a big old monster box that came from Czechoslovakia in 1937. And thus, a fishing lure was born. The late 30s saw his fortunes grow. He soon had 5 employees. You remember them? Shorty, Slim, Too Tall, Lure Senior, Lure Junior, and my mother, Clarice Jensen. And I was sitting on my mother's lap in 1940 at 4 years of age. We have a picture of us all there and the old building that he had. Anyway, the modest factory was closed during the war years of 1941 through 46. How my father managed to feed us, I do not know. He was a talented man, and we did eat a lot of salmon. The war ended. Brother Lure, 1946. Brother Lure came home from his World War II mission, which was behind Japanese lines deep in China. He was deployed in the repair of radios and teaching people how to radio out the weather that came down from Manchuria over China so we could manage our bombing of the Japs. Now the word Jap take on a feeling we don't call them Japs anymore. It's politically correct, but that's what they called them in the war years. They were Japs. Not so politically correct, but think back and remember asking my father when I was 6 years old, do you think we'll win the war, Dad? 1942. Do you think we'll win the war, Dad? A lot of you guys were there. He said, I don't know, son. Remember Pearl Harbor, all that. Most of you here were there. You remember. As you know, we did win the war, and our company soon prospered, as evidenced by the later catalogs that you saw that were being circulated. I personally, upon graduating from the University of Oregon, go Ducks, was then awarded the reins of the company. Brother LURH-JENSEN Jr., who was an avid fisherman, moved to Vancouver, British Columbia. He liked to fish. Well, he did, like I do. His beloved fishing grounds. I would be very remiss without giving my brother Lure Jr. and my brother David Jensen very much credit for the post-war growth of our company. My brother LURH-JENSEN Jr. was a genius. He laid the foundation for something that I came along in my ascendancy and my gifts of the blah, 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 I could sell. And I traveled the world selling fishing tackle and grew the company and not to say anything about snarky about it, because people would think, fishing tackle, you make it around the kitchen table. No, it was. We had 600 employees. I sold it for a lot of money, which allowed me to retire down here. I don't say that to be anything except what it was, because people think about fishing tackle. What is that? Nobody fishes. He fishes. No, you said you fish, but you don't. You didn't fish the Amazon? No. Man. So our company soon grew to 500 employees, 4 locations, United States, Canada, Mexico. In our ascendancy, about 40 different companies, smaller companies that allowed us to reach out to the fishermen in Alabama and wherever, all over. And that's allowed us to grow. Our company was sold in 2007. I was 70, 10 years ago. Had a stroke, which really sucks. I don't know how many of you know about strokes, but they're not good things. So my wife Judy and I happily retired in a very busy life in Palm Springs. And incidentally, our summer home in a slightly remodeled wood frame factory that my father built in 1946 is filled with many wonderful memories and a lot of personal stuff, like we all have.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Phil?
Yeah, question.
At the current time, what's the biggest manufacturer for a single one in the U.S. of fishing equipment?
We were number 2. Rapala, who bought our company, was number 1. Rapala enjoys sales around the world of probably about $200 million. Their sales in America are about $100 million, and incidentally, of I think 8 different companies that they bought, they have reported to me that ours was the best buy they ever made. And unbeknownst to me, they said their biggest market now is in South Africa. I didn't know that. Yeah, that was 10 years ago. Yeah. Any other questions?
Is fishing still as large of a sport as it used to be?
I think the fishermen are born to be fishermen. Is the resource the same? No, the resource is not the same. This ascendancy, you can see on the map of my back of the t-shirt, the Columbia River and its tributaries in the northwest. Let's say the main dams, starting with Grand Coulee and working down to Bonneville Dam. There's 7 dams on the main stem of the Columbia River. Now on the tributaries, many tributaries, each one of them has a small dam and a power plant to furnish, and they were all given about 100 years ago. They were licensed for 100 years. So these dams, these small dams on these tributaries, are not licensed anymore, and they're starting to take them out, which will allow then more spawning grounds for the fish. And of course we have our Department of Natural Resources and many clubs that are pounding the tables out, get those dams out and let those fish go to their spawning grounds so that we can have a not diminished but an enthusiastic and growing resource for fishermen. So here are a few little goodies, that souvenirs. They're keychains. Here's a special model I made back in 2004, Carrie Edwards, Book Cheney. And there's a whole box of them here, and you guys can please take one as a memento of this wonderful opportunity I've had to address you.
For more, go to KIWANIS PALM SPRINGS.org.